Welcome to United Jews channel.
Good evening. My name is Tatiana Kirchner, and we gathered today to discuss an article that was in Forward. The person whose name is Alex Zeldin wrote an article about Black Lives Matter, and the name was Black Lives Matter has exposed a generational divide for Soviet Jews. So Soviet Jews gathered today and to discuss the article because it touched their lives. I think all of us who have any relations to Soviet Union, who came to the United States, at some point, we got our life established here, and we gave birth to children or brought the young children here, and they grew up. And what we have right now is a misunderstanding, gap, different opinions, and at some points it came to really bad, like a war between parents and children. So we all are trying really hard to understand what happened. We're trying to be more connected to our kids. We're trying to make sure that our kids think of us as people, as of good people, and we don't want to lose our children in this war. I call it a war because I don't know how else to call it. And this article was in social networks, and it was discussed a lot, and people shared their opinions. And I would like us right now to share our opinions. When you read the article, please tell us your thoughts. What did you think of it? What did it spark in your mind? Who wants to start?
Since I don't know, Lena actually posted a response to Mr. Zeldin yesterday on Facebook as well as on forward letters. Is that correct?
Oh, sorry guys, I haven't read it, but if you can summarize, it would be great.
So, well, I can summarize what I was saying. I found that article to be extremely offensive. He starts the article with a description of how he moved to United States, and they went to a grocery store in New Jersey, and his mother looked at all the beautiful produce and said, "Look, Sashenka, this is why we moved here." So that by itself I found very offensive. My family and a lot of families of my friends did not move here for a produce section. We moved here because our life in the Soviet Union was, we were Jews, we were second-class citizens there. I don't have to explain to people in this group what we were. There were quotas everywhere in the universities, at jobs. I left Soviet Union as a high schooler. My parents applied for immigration 8 years before we actually got out. And it took quite a bit to get out and to say to us that the reason that we went through all that and came here is for a beautiful produce section is amazingly offensive. And then he takes that and he summarizes it later in the article and says, and that is why the older generation of Russian Jews is so worried about BLM. They're worried that scarcity of produce and that is going to affect them here. That is not what we are worried about. We came here to be free. We came here to have a voice, to be able to explain, to be able to say what we mean. I was growing up with a double life. At home, my parents were saying one thing, and in school, I knew I could never repeat any of that. And that's how we lived. And that's what is happening now. We are seeing people getting fired left and right because they said something that is different from a main narrative. We see people writing denunciations, which is exactly what our grandparents, told us about. And
so we are back in Soviet Union right now. Are
not
we?
even in the Soviet Union.
Yeah,
We're not we're not quite all the way back to Stalin, but we're definitely in today's America, we're already worse than Brezhnev. We are.
Lena, may I interrupt you right now because I want to hear, you've mentioned a lot of things already. Does anybody else want to mention anything? Do you agree or?
I want to just add that not only were we not coming here for produce section, my family was luckier than Lena's. We were not refused, but my mother was sure that we would be. She was preparing me. When I was 13, she was preparing me that you know what it means that we're applying, we'll be refused for the next 5 to 10 years, we'll be eating only macaroni because that's the only thing we'll be able to afford. And it was literally what she was preparing her oldest, the 13-year-old, for the reality of life for the next 5 to 10 years. And
I think, our parents prepared us much better than the parents of Alex, honestly, because I think they worked a lot. And I think he mentioned that, there's a work ethics in his family. Everybody worked really, really hard, but did they actually have any time to devote to the son and tell them anything that it was valuable to tell as a lessons that needs to be told from the parents to their children? I don't think this happened. I think they were very busy. I mean, this was my understanding, that they were very busy building American life, making sure there's bread on the table. And Alex was there, hanging out with the father, whenever at his job. So I think he didn't get the valuable lessons from the parents. That's my idea, understanding, but I could be wrong. Anybody else wants to add to this?
I want to add something here. I also came to the United States back in the 1989. So I have experienced firsthand the life in the Soviet Union. Actually left just as the Soviet Union was almost no more. So I can agree on certain aspects of the article as it says, but also there are some disagreements. Agreements are in the phase of, yes, the United States may be experiencing some sort of a growth right now in where certain groups of people who were persecuted for many years and generations, actually, for that matter, that people of color and actually anyone who are not who do not look like white Anglo-Saxon Americans, or whatever the term is, WASPs them. And it is unfortunate that we are part of that group. We will look like what we are them. So yes, it may look like that we are representation of the persecution of the people of color. But at the same time, it's also we have to realize that we're living here in San Francisco Bay Area. We're living here in New York, major concentration centers. None of these areas are actually United States. They're something totally different. They are just enclaves of European people most of the time. So we do not have an experience of living among other states and with other people. I have had a chance to live in Missouri back in early 2000s. I visited Alabama as part of my work. And to tell you that what is experienced right now is the BLM movement, it is actually really live there. We may be looking at it from a side, but it's people actually living in that state right there. So to say that my personal opinion on the whole article and actually on the whole discussion of the BLM situation is the people of color actually are Jews of the United States. Like what we were in the Soviet Union, they're here in the United States. They've been just persecuted for a lot longer. And they are right now speaking up. It's not that we have to fight against them, but they were the ones who actually stood up for us. if you read anything, recently John Lewis, the black congressman, passed away. He was the one who was very vocal in his support of allowing Jews to live in the 1980s. He addressed both Gorbachev and Reagan repeatedly to let the Jews leave the United States by stating that we are all Jews. That was his words. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can actually look it up on the C-SPAN archives, and if you like, I can share the link with you. So that's my 5 cents.
Thank you, Kirill.
That is maybe, but I mean, there's a lot of black people that are quite the opposite, if you know what I mean. There's a lot of anti-Semitism amongst the blacks. So you can't paint them all with the same brush. So I don't think I don't think this has anything to do with the color of their skin. It's just a person that understands the plight, and he supported the Jews, and the other people did the opposite. Why does it have to be about the color of their skin?
The skin color does not have anything to do with the situation. It just so happens that they are black and we are Jews. They are Jews. They are people and we are people. We are humanity on itself. It doesn't have to be that. They don't have to be of any color for that matter. It just people, and a lot of them actually stood up for our rights, and a lot of American Jews, not unfortunately the immigrants from the Soviet Union, are standing up for their rights today. We're looking beyond this. We're looking beyond the skin color. We're looking beyond the personality. Yes, there's a lot of bad apples. There's a lot of anti-Semitism. There is a lot of hate. Likewise, there's a lot of similar things happening among even our immigrant community. Like there are people who are rabidly against others. Like you look at the tensions between the religious community and the secular Jewish community. They look at it here in the States. Look at it there, look at it in Israel. Look at it. The differences divide between people who would actually accuse anyone who are not supporting the current administration as traitors and heathens, or look at the people who are trying to bridge the divide. So the skin color may be a factor because it's identifiable, but it's not the only thing here. We need to stand up together as people. We need to support each other. They're not that different from us except for different color.
I'd like to address both of the very important points that Kirill brought up in his opening. So first of all, yes, I live in Cupertino for the last God knows how many years, but I emigrated to Taliansky. That's where I went to high school.
Can you speak up, please?
Through all of high school.
You're breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, after the war out, we emigrated to Omaha, Nebraska. This is where I went to high school. My experience was completely different from Kirill's. I had black friends immediately. They were always in the white crowd that I was in. They were black friends. My sister, who is younger than me, her best friend for all her life since then was a black boy. In fact, what is it now? 30 years later, last time I saw him was at my parents' place back in Omaha. He was visiting his parents. It was 6 months ago. He writes every, even though he's not Jewish, on holidays, he writes my parents' letter addressed to mom and dad. And that's the experience in the Midwest in the 1980s. So, and from what I've seen, as I said, it was a universal experience. Right now, my future son-in-law is black. He is a black Jew. He is not afraid to go anywhere as a black person. He would be afraid to go to most black neighborhoods wearing his kippah, and that's a fact. And that's an experience. So I honestly don't know what it means to say that black people are Jews of the United States. In the Soviet Union, Jews had to score far above any non-Jew to get into university. In the United States, I read data from Harvard Crimson regarding SAT scores by demographics. Literally, I think it's an article about 1 year old. Based on the fact that in each section SAT score is 800 points, and based on their data, I calculated that an average successful Black applicant to Harvard can miss twice as many questions as an average white applicant, and 4 times as many questions as an average Asian applicant. In what way is that possibly related to the experience of Jews in the United States? Or sorry, Jews in the Soviet Union. And as far as, I also want to address the question about John Lewis. I happen to know a lot about it because I studied it a lot. John Lewis happens to be, or happened to have been, the last of the close entourage of Martin Luther King. He was one of the speakers at the march in Washington. He was one of the youngest of this close group that was close to Martin Luther King. And yes, majority of those people, including the top people, including Dr. King, including Ralph Abernathy and Bayard Rustin, were not only Philo-Semitic, but quite frankly, Zionist. And there was a close connection between the leaders of the civil rights movement, the Black leaders and the Jewish leaders who were marching in Washington together. That is not who BLM is. BLM is not legacy of Martin Luther King and his supporters. BLM is legacy of Black Panthers, of H. Rap Brown, and of Stokely Carmichael, people who were deeply anti-Semitic then and people who are deeply anti-Semitic now. We're talking about 2 completely different worlds. The people who are ravaging the businesses, the people who attacked the BLM that made that pogrom in LA and who desecrated dozens of synagogues all across North America, they are not the legacy of Martin Luther King and his supporters. They're a legacy of far darker people who were their contemporaries. So no, we are not connected to them. We're connected to people, quite frankly, whose name they're desecrating.
Yeah, and I actually completely agree with you. And I would also pose a question that we as people who, we're not exactly victimized back in the Soviet Union, but we did experience discrimination. Everybody would agree to that. I don't know a single person who hasn't experienced some sort of discrimination. So we came here with our suitcases and we made our life here in this country. Why do we have to acknowledge any type of white privilege to these people when we have none? I don't feel I have any. I think they are more privileged than I am, exactly because what the previous person said, that they get preferences at the universities and everything else. So why would I acknowledge my white privilege? Why do I owe them anything? I don't owe them anything. That is my point. And my children actually think the same. I don't have the children problem that was mentioned in the article.
You're very lucky, actually, that you don't have children problem right now.
Probably yes, but my children are not supporting this BLM nonsense.
It's wonderful.
They're young, right? So they are more sort of socially advanced, maybe. I don't know how to say it, but
well,
they understand.
Great. That's wonderful. I just wanted to mention one thing. People who are Blacks in America, first of all, they were born in the United States, right? They know language better than I know it, okay? They know the culture better than I know it. They can actually find job easier than I can, I think. I don't, my relatives have never have any connections to slave owners. None whatsoever. We lived in a different continent. There's absolutely no relations. Tell me, how am I, what privilege? I just don't get it. I agree with Michael here.
If anything, it's the other way around. My son, who is doing his PhD now, when he was applying to university, he told me that, that I have a handicap. I am a white guy, but exactly. he was also the United States Navy veteran. So he says, well, I have a handicap and I have a benefit. It sort of washes out for me. And this is exactly the point. He's also Jewish, but that wasn't in the discussion at that point.
You know, my nephew applied for an Ivy League. He's with a 4.5 GPA, with being on wrestling team. I mean, all the, you know, highest top score, SAT. None of Ivy League schools were interested in him. None. But I can imagine if he was another skin color, he would be everywhere. So tell me, what white privilege?
Actually, I know who the Jews of America are. The Jews of America are the Asians. I have an anecdote about that. So,
Okay.
one of my best friends from grad school, I happened to work with him in a research lab in Bay Area. A few years ago, he told me a funny story. His son was applying to college, and he is a nice American of German descent, big, blue-eyed, blonde, nice German name. He's married to a Japanese woman, and therefore their sons look partly Asian. And he was telling me, and my friend is a liberal. He supports all the affirmative action and everything. He told me as a joke, you know, Jeffrey came up to me yesterday and asked me if he should include his photograph in the college application. And I said, what, are you crazy? Really, why would a kid who looks partly Asian ruin his chances when he has such a nice white name? The Asians are the Jews of America. The Asians are the Jews of America. This is what I mean. They have to score. They have to score or miss twice based on that Harvard study. Whites can afford to miss twice as many questions as Asians to get into Harvard. Blacks can afford to miss 4 times as many. So who is the Jew here?
Yeah, I used to know. I used to know a person who was, imagine this, half Jewish and half Native American. And that person went to Berkeley on the Native American part.
Of course.
And he had the best of both worlds, because he's got the Jewish brains and he was half Native American.
Yeah,
So this is all silly. This is absolutely silly, and this is unfair. And I think we as a society need to put a stop to this. Totally.
I totally agree with all of your statements.